Squiz Kids acknowledges the traditional owners of the lands on which we podcast, the Turrbal and Kombumerri people.
Squiz Kids!
It's your daily news fix. Fun, free, fresh.
Hello and welcome to Squiz Kids Today, your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you. I'm Christy Kijarina. It's Thursday, February 27. In Squiz Kids Today, Warships in the Tasman, an Arctic vault deposit, Girl Scout cookie caution, and a dog's favourite colour. That's what's making news, kid style.
The Lowdown.
If the adults in your life have had the news on this week, whether on TV, radio, or the Squiz Today podcast, the grown-up version of Squiz Kids, you might have heard about 3 Chinese Navy warships cruising through the Tasman Sea, the ocean between Australia and New Zealand. But what really made the headlines was what happened last Friday. A Virgin Airlines pilot flying over the Tasman received an emergency broadcast warning that he was in the middle of a live fire drill, meaning that the Chinese Navy were testing weapons below him. Not exactly the in-flight announcement that you want to hear. So let's unpack this. Now, the Chinese ships were in international waters, parts of the ocean not owned by any country, so they weren't breaking any laws. And the Australian and New Zealand Defence Forces had been tracking them since mid-February. The issue? Australia says that China didn't give enough warning about their exercises, which could have put flights at risk. China insists that they followed the rules. It's a bit like bringing your whole footy team home without telling your mum. It's not against the rules, but it's not exactly polite either. The Virgin pilot relayed the message to air traffic control and about 30 flights were rerouted to stay safe. So why was China holding drills so far from home? Well, it's not unheard of. Australia, the US, Japan and the Philippines held similar exercises in the South China Sea last October. China has also been strengthening its ties with Pacific Island nations like the Solomon Islands and the Cook Islands, and maybe it was a little bit of military flexing as well. Whatever the reason, officials suggest that clearer rules of the sea might be needed, because when big ships and big weapons are involved, it's best to avoid misunderstandings.
Spin the globe.
Each day we give the world globe a spin and find a news story from wherever it stops. And today we've landed way up north in the Arctic Circle on a remote Norwegian island called Svalbard, where a very special deposit is about to be made into a bank. Now, this isn't the kind of bank where you stash your pocket money. This is the Global Seed Vault, home to more than 1.3 million seed varieties from almost every country in the world. These seeds, many of which are from essential food crops like rice, wheat or corn, are stored in case of disasters. And next Tuesday, another 14,000 varieties are going to be added. So why hide seeds away in freezing caves beneath the Arctic permafrost? Well, it's to protect plant biodiversity. So if a fungus or a virus wiped out one type of corn, say, another variety might be resistant to that disease and could help to replace it, or even to provide genes to save it. Since opening in 2008, the vault has already helped to replant crops lost during the war in Syria. So while Svalbard might be famous for reindeer and auroras, it's also protecting the future of the world's food.
Weird science.
All right, it's time for a Weird Science Animal Kingdom mashup, because this story is all about dogs and their surprising love for yellow. Researchers in India found that dogs living in the streets overwhelmingly preferred yellow objects. In an experiment with nearly 460 free-ranging dogs in Kolkata, scientists placed 3 bowls, one yellow, one blue and one grey, in front of each dog. And whether the bowls were empty or filled with food, the dogs chose yellow more than 50% of the time. And when there was just a grey and a yellow bowl, even when the grey one was filled with raw chicken, delicious, the dogs still beelined for the yellow one about 77% of the time. And why? Well, scientists think it could be a learned behaviour because Indian food scraps often contain turmeric, a spice that turns food yellow. Or maybe it's because dogs that see differently from us see reds and pinks as shades of yellow, and they associate that with meat. Now, researchers want to test dogs in other countries, including Australia. Sounds like the perfect experiment for a school science fair.
News hounds.
Every Thursday, Squizzy the News Hound sticks his snout into Squiz Kids HQ to report back on fishy things he sniffed out on the internet. And today, his nose is going crazy because he's caught the scent of fresh-baked cookies. But something smells a little off. You might have seen on TV or on YouTube that in the USA, Girl Scouts sell cookies to raise money. Kind of like the old school fundraisers here. But lately, some social media influencers have been claiming that these cookies are toxic. So what gives? Well, labs did test the cookies and they did find tiny traces of chemicals and metals that could be toxic. If an average 10-year-old were to eat 9,000 of these cookies in a single day. And honestly, I think they'd have bigger problems. So why are influencers spreading this claim? Well, some of them are using these sensational posts to push their own homemade cookie recipes. Sneaky. Parents, if you'd like your young person to learn more about identifying mis and disinformation, I've stuck a link to a letter that you can send to your school's principal telling them all about newshounds. Thanks, Squizzy, you've done it again.
Time for the quiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. In which sea were the Chinese Navy when they were conducting live firing exercises last week? Did you say the Tasman Sea? Well done you. Question number 2. How many new varieties of seeds will be added to the Global Seed Vault next week? That's right, it's a massive 14,000 new varieties. Question number 3. Name the spice used in many Indian foods that turns them yellow. Nice work if you remembered that it's turmeric.
Shout outs.
It's Thursday, February 27. Today marks 29 years since the launch of the first Pokemon video games, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green, in Japan in 1996. These games kicked off a global phenomenon, turning Pokemon into one of the most popular and successful entertainment franchises in history. It's also a special day for these Squiz kids celebrating a birthday today. Joshua from Mount Waverley, Taylor from Langwarrin, Zach from Fern Tree Gully, Jaden from the Gold Coast, Archie from Newcastle, Jalen from West Albury, Rory from Leichhardt, Sammy from Baronia, Evie from Lugano, Lenny from Palm Beach, and Natasha from Shado Park. And classroom shout-outs today go to Class 6BA with Mr Baker at Yarrabilba State School, Class 5D with Mrs Flaherty at Cannonvale State School, Class 5KG with Mrs Gallagher at Proserpine State School, Class 5-6B with Mr. Blaine at Belmont Primary School. And lastly, but definitely not leastly, Class LA9 with Miss Carey at Atwell Primary School. Don't forget, if you've got a birthday coming up and you want a shout out, or if you're after a classroom shout out, just drop us a line at squizkids@thesquiz.com.au or fill out the form on our website. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening to Squiz Kids today. We'll be back again tomorrow with the Kids versus Adults Weekly News Squiz. In the meantime, get out there and have a most excellent day. Over and out.